Your mind is constantly scanning for danger, and when it cannot find real threats, it creates imaginary ones. That is why you feel anxious even when everything is fine, why your heart races before nothing has happened, and why your thoughts become loud in moments of silence. Your mind does not understand peace. It understands threats. Uncertainty feels like danger, change feels like danger, and growth feels like danger. So your mind resists all three. You may think you are overthinking because you are intelligent, careful, or prepared, but overthinking is not intelligence. It is fear disguised as logic. Every what if, every imagined failure, every future disaster is your mind trying to control what it cannot predict. And when control is impossible, your mind panics. This is why intelligent people often suffer the most, because they see too many possibilities, too many outcomes, and too many risks, and instead of moving forward, they freeze. Your mind prefers you trapped in thought rather than uncomfortable in action, because action involves uncertainty, and uncertainty terrifies the mind. Your mind also carries a dangerous bias. It remembers pain more clearly than pleasure. One insult outweighs 10 compliments. One mistake feels heavier than years of success, and one rejection echoes longer than countless moments of acceptance. This is not weakness, it is biological programming. Your ancestors survived because they remembered danger, not happiness. But in the modern world, this bias turns inward. You begin to believe the negative voice in your head is the truth. You stop saying you are having a negative thought and start saying this is who you are. And that is where suffering begins. Because that voice is not you, it is conditioning. Your mind learned fear from past experiences, from embarrassment, rejection, and failure, and now it repeats those memories endlessly, believing repetition equals protection. Your mind thinks that by reminding you of pain, it is keeping you safe. But instead of protecting you, it traps you in the past. Your mind also hates change, even positive change, because new opportunities bring uncertainty, and uncertainty signals danger. That is why your mind sabotages growth, convincing you to stay where you are, even if where you are makes you miserable. This is why people stay in toxic relationships, remain in jobs they hate, and settle for lives that slowly drain them. Your mind does not want freedom, it wants predictability, and even pain feels safer than the unknown. The most dangerous part is that your mind speaks in your own voice, so you trust it, you obey it, and you rarely question it. Slowly and quietly, your life becomes smaller. Fewer risks, fewer dreams, less courage, until one day you feel empty, not because you failed, but because you never truly lived. And the worst part is that you think this is normal. Your mind does not care about your dreams. It cares about your survival. It does not ask whether a thought is true. It only asks whether it feels threatening. That is why your mind exaggerates problems, magnifies risks, and minimizes possibilities. A small mistake becomes proof of failure. A single rejection becomes evidence of unworthiness, and a temporary setback feels like a permanent identity. Your mind connects random moments into dangerous stories, stories that say you are not enough, that you will fail again, that you should not try. These stories feel real because they are repeated, and repetition creates belief. Over time, your mind trains you to doubt yourself before the world ever does. And this is how self-sabotage begins. You hesitate when opportunities appear. You delay decisions that could change your life. And you abandon goals not because you cannot achieve them, but because your mind convinces you that the risk is too high. Fear disguises itself as logic, and comfort disguises itself as wisdom. Your mind tells you to wait for the perfect moment, but the perfect moment never arrives because your mind will always find a reason to delay. This is how potential dies quietly, not through failure, but through hesitation. Your mind also creates an illusion of identity. It convinces you that your thoughts define who you are, that your fears are your personality, and that your past mistakes are your future limits. You begin to introduce yourself through your limitations instead of your potential, saying things like, "This is just how I am," or "I have always been like this." But this identity is not truth. It is a pattern repeated so often that it feels permanent. Your mind is not describing reality, it is reinforcing familiarity, because familiarity feels safe. The more you identify with your thoughts, the more power they gain over you. You stop observing your mind and start obeying it, and obedience turns thoughts into commands. This is when anxiety becomes constant, motivation disappears, and life feels heavy without a clear reason. You are not broken, you are not weak, and you are not failing. You are simply listening too closely to a voice that was never meant to run your entire life. Your mind was designed to warn you, not to lead you. When it becomes the leader, fear becomes the decision maker. Every choice is filtered through what could go wrong instead of what could grow. This is why many people live safely but never live fully. They avoid pain, but they also avoid meaning. They escape failure, but they also escape fulfillment. And slowly, they confuse comfort with peace. Here is something most people never realize. The mind creates suffering not because it hates you, but because it does not understand modern life. It reacts to social pressure as if it were physical danger. It reacts to emotional discomfort as if it were death. And because the threats never end, the mind never rests. This is why even success does not bring peace, because the mind simply searches for the next thing to worry about. You may notice that even when you achieve something, the satisfaction fades quickly. The mind moves the goalpost. What once felt important suddenly feels small. This is not ingratitude, it is survival programming. The mind does not want you satisfied because satisfaction signals rest, and rest feels unsafe to a system built for vigilance. So it keeps you striving, worrying, and doubting, even in moments where you should feel calm. At some point, if you pay close attention, you will notice something strange. You will realize that thoughts appear on their own. You did not invite them, you did not choose them, they simply arrive. A fear appears without permission, a memory surfaces without warning, a doubt interrupts peace without asking, and yet you immediately treat these thoughts as facts. You assume that because a thought exists, it must be true. This is the moment where the mind gains control, not by force, but by agreement. Here is the turning point most people never reach. You are not your thoughts. Thoughts are events, not identities. They pass through awareness the same way clouds pass through the sky. But when you forget this, you confuse the cloud with the sky itself. You believe every story your mind tells you, even when those stories are built on fear, not reality. Awareness is not about stopping thoughts, it is about seeing them without obeying them. The moment you create distance between yourself and your thoughts, their power weakens. Fear still appears, but it no longer controls your actions. Doubt still whispers, but it no longer decides your future. This is where freedom begins, not by changing the mind, but by no longer being trapped inside it. The mind was never meant to be a master, it was meant to be a tool. When you stop reacting automatically, something shifts. You begin to notice how often your mind exaggerates danger and underestimates your strength. You see how many opportunities you avoided because of imagined outcomes. You realize how much of your suffering was created not by life, but by your interpretation of life. This realization can feel uncomfortable because it removes the illusion that something outside you is responsible, but it is also empowering because it gives control back to you. The mind will continue to speak. It will warn, doubt, and question. That will never stop. The difference is that you no longer treat every thought as an order. You listen, but you decide. You observe, but you choose. This is the difference between being controlled by fear and moving with awareness. Peace is not the absence of thoughts. Peace is the absence of identification with them.
When you stop arguing with your mind and stop obeying it, silence appears naturally. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of clarity. In that space, action becomes easier, decisions feel lighter, life feels less heavy. Your mind may still say you are not ready. It may still remind you of past failures. It may still predict future pain. But now, those thoughts no longer define you. They are simply signals from an outdated survival system trying to protect you in a world it does not understand. And here is the final truth. Your mind is against you only when you believe it should control your life. The moment you step back into awareness, the mind returns to its proper place, a guide, not a ruler, a warning system, not a prison. You were never broken, you were never weak, you were simply listening too closely to a voice that was never meant to lead. And the moment you realize this, your life begins to open again, not because fear disappears, but because it no longer decides who you become. Your mind will continue to speak for the rest of your life. It will warn you, doubt you, and try to protect you from uncertainty. That will never stop. But what can stop is the suffering created by obeying every thought without question. Freedom does not come from controlling the mind, and it does not come from silencing it. Freedom comes from understanding it. The moment you stop letting fear decide your actions, your life begins to expand. You take steps even when doubt is present. You move forward even when certainty is missing. You live instead of waiting. Your mind was never your enemy. It was simply doing the only job it knows how to do. But it was never meant to run your life. It was meant to serve it. And the moment you reclaim that role, something powerful happens. You stop living in imagined futures and start existing in reality. You stop surviving and start living. The world does not change when you stop identifying with your mind, but your experience of the world does, and that changes everything. Fear loses its authority, doubt loses its voice, and for the first time, you realize that peace was never something you had to chase. It was something that appeared the moment you stopped fighting yourself. And when you look back, you will understand this truth clearly. Your mind was never truly against you. It was only waiting for you to take control.